let me introduce myself. My name is Chris Takana. I am 33 years old and I'm from South Africa. I've been living here in Korea for about, actually as of last month, 10 years. So I'm officially a legacy foreigner in Korea.
Officially.
Officially.
How were you able to settle in Korea long term?
It took quite a long time to be able to settle here as a long-term resident. For at least 5 or 6 years, I lived here wanting to consider myself a long-term resident here, but it was always living year to year. It took quite a long time to get myself a visa and a living and working situation where I truly felt secure and could think of myself as a long-term resident.
So visa stuff. So you came on a tourist visa and then you transferred to a teaching English visa.
Yeah.
And then how has that changed to what you're doing now?
Yeah, so since I first came to Korea, I must have been on 4 or 5 different visas, and it is kind of one of the most difficult things about being a foreigner that wants to live in Korea long term. So my history is something along the lines of tourist visa, teaching visa, searching for employment visa, teaching visa, I think modeling visa, teaching visa, and then now my current visa, which is the temporary residency visa. I kind of have only one left that's in my sights, and that's the permanent residency visa, which is the kind of securest I can be here. But that's sort of everything I've gone through trying to figure out how to keep living in this country, doing what I want to do.
To go from teaching to having now your sort of temporary residence, the F2 visa, right? What, the rules are always changing, but what did you have to do?
So for me to go from a teaching visa to an F27 or the residency visa, there are a couple of main things that I had to do. The first and probably the most scary and difficult one was getting my Korean language ability up to scratch. And I had to do a bunch of exams and tests in order to show that I was basically able to live and communicate here. The way to get the visa is you have to get all these points, and different things give you the points. One is doing the language tests, the other is I needed to earn enough money, my education, my age, what I had studied, all these things affected how many points I got. Once I got enough points, I went into the visa office and very nervously gave them all my documents and then waited 4 to 6 weeks for a response.
So now that you don't teach English, what do you do now for work?
Yeah. So when I first came here, I was teaching English, and I taught English for quite a long time, probably between 5 and 7 years, or 4 and 6 years, something at least more than 5 years.
At least half.
At least half the time here I was teaching English, and at least half of the time I was teaching English, I didn't want to be doing it.
Right.
So once I was, I had always been shooting photos and doing my own photography since I came to Korea, but little by little I started recognizing opportunities to work in that field, and that was one of the prime motivators for trying to get the visa. And yeah, the day I did get my residency visa, I quit my job and then just went all in on working full-time as a freelance photographer. So yeah, that's what I've been doing ever since.
So in the process of settling down here, what were some things that were maybe easier than you expected and harder than you expected? It sounds like visa stuff maybe a little bit harder. Financial stuff can be a little bit more difficult, but what were things that were easier or other things that kind of gave you more difficulties than you would have expected?
Yeah, so I'd say on a positive note, the thing that I have found that was the easiest here was just sort of a basic level of acceptance from people around me, whether that's people who are my peers, the kind of people I'm trying to spend time with, or just the sort of average person on the street. I walk around taking photos outside a lot and I talk to strangers, and the amount of kind of little yogurt drinks or apples or sweet potatoes that people give to me and then just sit and chat together, that has been so much easier than I anticipated, despite the language barrier. I could speak some Korean, but even when all I had was hello, I was still able to sort of have these positive interactions with people. So yeah, that was a lot easier than I expected. In terms of things that were more difficult than I expected, I really thought I was special in terms of the visa stuff. I thought I found out exactly what I needed and I was I won't have to go through all that. there'll be some other easier way for me to do it. I can just go around the system. Like, it took me years to come to terms with the fact that like I just had to dive into the system and be a part of it in order to get the visa stuff sorted. And it was difficult, but ultimately doable.
So how has your perception of Korea changed since you first got here compared to now 10 years on?
It's a bit of a difficult question to answer because I like it as much as I ever did. And the things that I've grown to like about it are not the things that I initially paid attention to. Like things like there's just very little crime, and so it's incredibly safe to walk around, carry my camera gear. I'm never like thinking about what might happen to it or to me. Like that's amazing. And it didn't take me long to sort of grow accustomed to that.
Right.
And otherwise, just when I first got here, I felt sort of very hopeful that I was going to be able to do things and meet people who were interested in sort of, I guess, building cultural products. And for a while with the teaching and the visa situation, it made me feel like if all of that stuff was solved, it would be possible,
right.
But it's very difficult to do while being held back with the visa. And that's kind of, I think, proved true. Now that I have the visa to live and work as I please, like we can do this like from a studio I'm renting kind of thing, which I'm like really stoked to be able to do. And to like, I think it's Thursday, and like I didn't have anywhere specifically I had to be today, but I still got my work done kind of thing. And so my perception was that Korea, like, you can live an interesting life here. And I feel like that's been, at least for me, fulfilled.
Nice. Could you talk a little bit about what it's like meeting other people here, kind of networking, relationships, both personal and business, and how would you find, or how would you describe that sort of stuff here? Has it been difficult? Has it been easy or anything?
In terms of making relationships with other Korean people out here, as I was saying before, people tend to be very welcoming and kind, and you really get out of those relationships what you put into them. If you're willing to learn a little bit of Korean and you're willing to work at it a little bit, I think you can have some like really cool relationships with Korean people here as a foreigner. In terms of the professional relationships, I guess my experience with that as a photographer is that I work for a number of companies shooting photos for them. Often what will happen is I'll work for one company, one of the people that works at that company will leave, move to another company or start their own one, and then kind of invite me over. And so a number of the places where I work and a number of my sort of like income streams have come just from like knowing one person or one group of people that have like slowly spread
your web out, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's been really nice. There's like a sense of, I don't know if loyalty is quite the right word, but a willingness to sort of keep relationships going in different contexts.
Now that you've been here in Korea for quite a few years, you've had some interesting experiences from being on TV, other sorts of, maybe we'll call it only in Korea opportunities. Could you talk about that or some other experiences that you've had or what's gone on with that?
Sure. Yeah, that's my eyes. Yeah, so being a foreigner in Korea, I think I've definitely had some opportunities come my way just because I'm a foreigner here. The one that jumps to mind, as you're saying, is being on TV. Like, so I've done one fairly popular Korean TV show, which is all about like the foreigner's experience of living in Korea, where I got to walk around Seoul taking photos, and they followed me around and sort of got my impressions on it. Some other experiences that I think I've had out here as just because I've been a foreigner. I mean, modeling would be a big one. Like, actually, when I was teaching, I remember I had to leave early once, and one of my students was like, "Well, where are you going? Where are you going?" And my co-teacher said to the student, like, "Oh, like Chris teacher has to go to a modeling job right now." And the kid looked me in the eye and he was like, "It's not because of your face, it's because you're tall." And I was just like, "Bro, sick burn, Dexter, you're like one of my good ones." Like, where did that come from? So yeah, like, I mean, that is totally part of it. Like,
you are tall.
I am tall, and I would certainly not have modeled back in South Africa, despite the protestations of my mother, who always suggested that I try.
Of course.
Yeah, that's being out here, these kind of things happen.
could you just talk a little bit about your YouTube and what you're trying to do with that, or what you hope to do, or just talk, you can plug it a little bit.
So several years ago, 2 years ago, actually, I didn't have all that much work coming in, and I got a little bit nervous, and so I was like, I need to get my name out there as a photographer. How can I do that with all this spare time that I have? I was like, I'm going to start a YouTube channel where I walk around, take photographs, show people what it's like to work as a photographer here, and basically just do photography related content, but within the context of Korea.
Do you think it's helped you get any video work or any photo work? Do you think, now that you've been doing YouTube a bit more, do you think it has led to anything to do with your actual professional career?
Yeah, good question. I don't know if my YouTube channel has helped me get new work, but I've definitely gone into meetings where my clients will quickly pull up one of the videos I've made and then reference some kind of editing or some kind of thing I've done and say like, can we do this or something similar? And so I think making these YouTube videos is like, it's forcing me to learn a bunch about how to shoot and how to edit videos and sort of how to tell stories visually. And at the same time, that's like slowly starting to bleed into my corporate work as well.
Would you, now having been 10 years into it, would you recommend others to kind of follow in your footsteps and try and come here and settle down? Or how would you describe it to people maybe who are saying, someone who wanted to say, oh, I want to do that too, or how would you describe that?
Yeah, I would totally recommend Korea to anybody that was thinking that they wanted to come and live here. What I would also try to really drive home is that I really made the mistake of thinking I was special and that the system didn't apply to me. And the sooner someone accepts that the quickest way to a sort of happy, settled life here is to just go through the channels that are available to them, even if they're uncomfortable and take longer than you would want, it's just the best way to get set up here. And once you are set up here, it really can be a good, sort of fulfilling life. So yeah, 100%, I definitely recommend to people try and make it out here, try get out here and spend some time.
And then lastly, just any kind of funny stories, interesting tidbits that you want to share about your life in here that we haven't touched on or anything. Yes. I guess something, the one that I'm thinking of is so a few weeks ago when you guys went skating and your car broke down on the highway.
Yeah, sure.
I think, I don't know how it works in South Africa. Had that happened in America, one, it would be super dangerous, but two, I think you might get arrested. I feel like that it's a little bit different. There's sometimes things happen here and there's a bit of just it happens or whatever, and people just kind of let it slide and it's no big deal. I've been in car accidents and no one's really too fussed about anything or whatever, and so maybe tell that story or a little bit how that goes.
Sure.
I think that's a nice aspect of Korean life that people don't see or
yeah. So yeah, a couple funny stories about having lived here in Korea. And actually both of them will center around the car that I bought a year or two ago. So there is a sort of aspect of Korean culture where so long as everything ends up okay, things kind of just fly. You can just go with it. So I was driving home with a friend the other day after going for a skate, and we were on a freeway at 5 p.m. sort of bumper to bumper traffic when my car got stuck in 5th gear. I've got an old manual car. We had to just open the door, step outside and push the car with me. And we're probably doing this for 20 minutes. And I don't know how to contact insurance here. I wasn't too sure who
to call.
I didn't know who to call. I have insurance. I wasn't sure who insured me, but I knew I had it. I got an automatic robot, and in Korean it was just asking me a bunch of questions that I wasn't in the position to answer. So I was just Anyway, my friend just had to keep pushing me until somehow eventually my car popped from 5th into 3rd, which physically I don't know how that happened. And then I was just dude, get in now. He dove into the back seat and I basically just drove the whole way home in 3rd. The other one was actually when I went to go get the license for that car. I was so proud of myself. I did all the tests, I failed the first one. The driving instructor was dude, you drive beautifully, but you didn't follow the voice instruction correctly. So yeah, failed. Boom. Anyway, failed, went back, did the test again, got my, like, I think I got 100%. Dude was like, drove beautifully, stamp, here's your card. Get home, post a photo on Instagram, like, I'm the best. I've got my license now, can't wait to drive my new car. And one Korean friend is like, Chris, dude, congrats, but I think you got the wrong license. I was like, is that what? Like, is that a possibility? Turns out there's different licenses for different cars. I got the wrong one. So I went back in the other day and the guys were like, you're back, what's up? Like, to celebrate? And I was like, dude, Dewu Damas, give me the license for a Dewu Damas. I had to do all the tests again, like, took like another whole, like, I think another whole week to get it sorted out. It's like, oh man. It's just one of those things of like, a lot of the easy things about living in Korea are the difficult things about living elsewhere.
Right.
And the difficult things about Korea are like the easy things about living elsewhere. It's like, I pretend I understand a lot and just roll with it. And for the most part, it works out okay. But occasionally I have to spend a couple more hours at the Korean version of the DMV, I guess.
Right. Cool. Good.